So I'd like to
There's 2
welcome
seats up
everyone
here.
to Cortland County Historical Society. If you've not been here before, thank you for coming today. We're very glad to have Jim. A few things I should tell you. We do have refreshments. If you have not gotten any yet, there's brownies, there's coffee, there's water in a cooler. There's also a sign-in by the door. If you did not sign in, please sign out on your way out. We just kind of like to count how many people come. And there are 2 exits, the door you came in, and there's one at this back of the room if you have to leave in a hurry. You know, I'm not saying we're going to have a fire. We don't have a fire, but just in case. We do have a big sale going on. We have t-shirts over here. They're $5 each. They're Brockway t-shirts. We also have most of our publications are 50% off currently. So take advantage of that for your summer reading. We also have our Attic Treasure sale in the basement. If you missed it before, there's still a lot down there, and we're more than welcome to let you go down and take a look around. Also, if you're not a member, if you want to consider a membership, we do have membership forms, and it gets you free research, free museum tours, discounts on books. Oh, could you please silence your cell phones too? We always forget to say this one, and it's not on my list. I'm getting the eye back there. Also, if you're not interested in a membership, donations are always nice too. And next week our talk is on Lime Hollow, a land in flux, and it's Professor Scott Miranda from SUNY Cortland. It should be a really interesting talk. There were a lot of mills and things like that out there, a lot of water power, and he's going to talk about the transition from that to what it is today and everything in between. So we're looking forward to that one. One other thing, we actually are able to park at the Methodist church parking lot now. So for our lunch and learns. So Wednesday from 12 to 1, we are able to park over there. So if you had a hard time parking and you want to come next week, it should be much easier next week. So without further ado, I would really like to introduce Jim Pantas. He's going to be talking about music in Cortland in the 50s and 60s, and we're really anxious to hear about this because I've heard all kinds of things about the glory days of the music scene then. So I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you for coming, Jim.
Thank you. I see a lot of friends here, and I guess maybe a couple that aren't so friendly, but I don't know. I don't know that. I'll start this within the beginning. You've heard that line before. But I was in college in Utica, Mohawk Valley, and I got very ill with an overactive thyroid. And I was down to 91 pounds, and they sent me home in May of 1958. So Dr. Cummins, Ed Cummins, threw me right in the hospital. So we got to get some weight on you so we can operate. Dr. Higgins can take that thyroid out. So I went in. And about mid-June, my 16-year-old brother, Nick, came tearing into the hospital to tell me that they had a rock and roll band. Now, the only band that was in existence at the time was Bobby Comstock and the Counts in Ithaca. So I says, who's in this band? He says, oh, Ronnie Padabana and Jack Musey and Tommy Rogers. I said, oh, and, where are you going to play? He says, well, we need a manager. But what does the manager do? If I knew that, I wouldn't ask you. Do you want to be our manager? I said, well, I'll try it. I didn't know sick of. I really did. I was a big fan of rock and roll music. Back to this day, I'm still country's best Fats Domino fan. But so we started out, and they practiced, and they'd play a dance for me at the Homer American Legion and the Cortland Legion that was on Grant.
Grant Street.
Where?
Grant Street.
That's later.
Well, Port Watson.
I can't
Children's
remember.
home.
There was a guy that was a fireman that was in charge of. His name was Paul Lane. And all I had to do was pick up the phone and call him, and for 25 bucks I could have all that on that Friday night. No Saturday because they had bingo. And so we played a few dances. We charged 75 cents for a dance. and I'd give the band, if we had 200 people, I'd give them 100 and I'd keep 50 to pay the rent and for myself. So we did that for a while, and we got to, I don't think it was the summer of '58, but I think it was the summer of '59. There were some summer activities around. The most prominent at the time was over at Wattsville Park in Auburn. Now, we had 16-year-olds who could drive, but not at night. So we had to call on our friends. One of them is here. Louis Falso used to drive us over to Auburn. Right? Yeah. So there was a disc jockey over there that was on the radio. His name was Madman Morton. And Ross Morton, who later became the track announcer at Canandaigua and was there 45 years. But I'd haggle with him on the phone. They wouldn't pay you. They'd give you gas money. And that's all they'd give you. They figured they were giving you all kinds of promo on the radio. What else do you need? So we'd get 25 bucks to go over there, play a set, maybe 10, 12 songs. If you knew 10, 12 songs. And from there, my ex-wife said to me, where are they going to play and get paid other than maybe some high school jobs? And when they're old enough, maybe play in some bars. So she and I, in the summer of '59, went down to the public library and put together a list. Well, let me back it up. My soon-to-be partner was from Ithaca, and he booked all the houses at Cornell fraternity parties. So I said, well, I need some fraternities. So we go to the library and we put a list together of 700 and some odd fraternities all around the Northeast. Well, we get a mailing out. We don't get any response. We send a second mailing. I said, you know what? These guys don't know these bands from Adam. I'm going to tell them to call collect. Well, a couple of people that knew me said, you're nuts. All you're going to do is give these kids free rein on the telephone. But it worked. First call I got was from Middlebury, Vermont. And we sent a band up there by the name of Mickey Lee and the Persians. And some of the people were Mike Sewell, and Bobby Petrella, and Buddy DiStefano. Who else? That's about all I can. Oh, Gary Homer. So they went up there for 175 bucks. And they were a smash. So they came home, the phone started ringing, and we got them a bunch of parties at Middlebury and the University of Vermont in Burlington. In the meantime, Ronnie and the Red Caps at that time were doing enough around here. They had Ronnie's uncle owned Lester's Motel Restaurant, and they'd play down there, and they'd play at Domino's a little bit.
Did they play at the Russian Club too?
That is coming.
Oh. That's where I heard them.
Was Ronnie and Red Caps their first name?
No.
What was
First name was Ronnie and the Rumblers.
Okay.
But I didn't like that.
Okay.
So I got rid of that. Very subtly. Joe, you don't remember Ronnie and the Rumblers, do you? No. They were getting some work, and my brother, very frugal young man, didn't want to go traveling. When he heard 175 bucks to go to Middlebury, Vermont, he didn't want any part of it. Well, we got a job for 200 at Williams College in Williamstown, Massachusetts. They went up there, and they weren't, honest to God, they weren't playing 40 minutes. But what the phone started ringing, it was other houses wanting to book them. So that's how it started to spread. Some of the highlights, and Mr. Bodby will attest to this, one weekend we had all 15 houses at Colgate booked with our bands. And the reputation was really growing. And this went on, and well, maybe the school year of '63, and then in the summer of '63, my partner and I were in New York, and he knew a guy from Sweden by the name of Simon Brem. And Simon said he had a girl singer that needed a backup band for the summer to play amusement parks in Sweden. And he would pay X amount, he'd fly him over and all expenses. So I came home, I says, "Are you guys interested?" And the boys, except Ronnie, were very interested. Ronnie had just gotten married to Loretta Berardi, and he was sporting a wedding ring. He says, "I'm not going to Europe. I'm a married man." Now, let's see, I was 63, he was 22. So they went and they took Joe Leo with them to play bass. Now, they really didn't have any vocalists that was any quality, so they played mostly instrumentals. But they would do 20 minutes before they brought this. Lil Babs was her name. Boy, was she gorgeous. I still got pictures of her. And she was a clone of Connie Francis. And they were there 7 weeks. And they came home. And that's what this is all about. When they came home, my brother was full of whatever. And decided to make this poster to announce his playing at what I had opened in the meantime, a place called the Music Box at the old Russian Club on Owego Street. They rented it to me for $35 a month. Kicked me out after 6 months because the whole town was complaining. They found beer bottles in Beaudry Park. And Mary Ellen Marstead had a building on Central Avenue. And she called her attorney, John Foley, and she said, "Tell Mr. Pantas he can have that building free for 6 months so we can get him out of the South End." So we went to Central Avenue for 6 months, and I had it open too much and it just didn't fail. I mean, the varsity was across the street, so no point to have another hangout. But we did have some interesting acts there. I think that my bands in particular honed their trade in those places. They, because in the summer of '63, 62, we were driving around the East Coast trying to find summer work that would pay. And we came to Lake George. And we auditioned in 5 different places. "No, you're too loud, you're too loud." They were not loud compared to today. And finally we got hired at the Airport Inn. Hour on, hour off with another band. So it was an 8-hour evening.
Wow.
And they were there for 56 days. And my brother, who was working at Corona too, said, "This is no different than a factory job." So they quit Corona. He and Dick Butoff, who had taken Jack Mussey's place, they quit Corona, decided to do this full time. They didn't require a lot of money. They really didn't have any bad habits at that time. That I know about. Correct. In fact, to be downright honest about it, they didn't have any bad habits till Ronnie left here and went to California with the guitar player from Deep Purple, and then he became a smoking machine. And I don't mean Paul Malls, but I kind of found that hard to take because he was so against it. But they lasted, well, they had an accident in 1968 coming home from Connecticut. They played a club up there Wednesday through Sunday, and their Sunday job was from 5 to 9, and they would get in the car and drive home. Now, no drinking, nothing. So they cross into Massachusetts to catch the Mass Turnpike to get to the New York Thruway. And some drunk hits him head on and kills my brother, 26 years old. And the band began to transform after that. The band began to transform. David Feinstein took his place. And he was much of a, let's say, more hard rock guitar player than what my brother had been. So and times were changing, so there was a need to make some adjustments. And they lasted till about 1972. They became the Electric Elves and Elf. And then they went on tour with Deep Purple. And somehow, Ronnie got convinced to dump his band and go with Richie Blackmore. And they formed Blackmore's Rainbow. And that was the beginning of Ronnie's hard rock career, which was actually very good, very strong. In fact, when we had the first tribute for him in 2011, what's the guy's name? I can't ever remember. Alice Cooper. Alice Cooper was one of Ronnie's good friends, and he was going to come and MC that first tribute. 2 nights before, he calls me and says he can't come. He has a job in Japan. That's well, duty calls. He said, well, you don't understand. He said, in the States, people like Ronnie and I couldn't get 30,000 a night. Over there, we're 150 a night. Germany, Scandinavia, that hard rock lives on over there. And so that didn't happen. But we had the tribute. We raised $18,000, which I thought was pretty darn good. And originally we had talked about his cancer foundation, which is what he died of. And on the way into a meeting at the Hollywood of the committee, Dick Medoff, who's been a musician most of his life, stopped me. He was having a 50th class reunion meeting. He said, Jimmy, come here. He says, are you going to do a scholarship for Ronnie? He said, you were supposed to do one for Nicky and you didn't do it. I said, hey, oh, you're right. So I walked in, talked the committee into a scholarship. We contacted his ex-wife manager in California, and she said, no, you can't do that. The money's for the foundation. Well, we don't even have to have an event, if that's the case. So we had an event, and the wife of the leader of Black Sabbath called me 2 days after the event and demanded that we send all the money, which we did not do. 9,000 of it went into a scholarship fund, which now every year they try to have some kind of event to keep it running.
Or local.
At Cortland High School. Yeah. And one of my dearest friends, who used to be my attorney, gets solicited every year. He says, Jimmy, do I send it? I said, do what you want to do. But it's going, and I'm really glad that Medoff stopped me because I hadn't even thought about it. Some of the other group, excuse
What
me.
about Little York? You missed a little
Well,
piece, or is that not important?
No, I can go back to it because it involves other things.
Okay.
I really want to mention some of the groups that made achievements that people may not know about. The closest I came to having a hit record was in 1963. A very good young performer by the name of Carl Falso. They called him Cal Dio. Yeah. He had a mother who was a British war bride. Married his father Tony, and he was in the service. And she died of breast cancer that spring of '63. He was absolutely devastated. Couldn't get him to go practice, nothing. Fortunately, there was a guy in the group that wasn't much of a musician. But boy, was he a hustler. His name was Bobby Nossoff. And Slosh comes to me. He said, how are we going to get Carl out of this funk? I said, you know, Bob, you like to take a chance on writing? He's a good writer. Why don't you get him to write something? Well, it wasn't 4 days. They showed up at my little record shop where King Sub eventually was. And he says, Jim, we got what we think is not a bad song. So they played the song, and it was called Mind Your Mama. Well, in those days, Mohawk Airlines out of Utica ran a program where if you got on a plane Monday morning, you could fly all week till Friday afternoon for 75 bucks. I took the record, got on the plane. I went to 32 cities in the 4.5 days. I got 80 some odd stations on the record. We thought we were on our way. I come home. I go to the tavern next door to have lunch with Skip Boyce. And at 10 minutes to 1, Walter Cronkite comes on to tell us that the president's been shot. And the radio stations went off popular music for 4 days. We lost the record. Because they don't come back. There's always somebody next week that's got something they want. And so that's the closest I came to that. My next, I guess, plus situation, a band came to me from Skinny Atlas by the name of Free Will. Whose leader was a guy you're going to have in Homer very soon by the name of Joe Whiting.
Just that.
Oh, he's been here?
Last Friday.
You missed it.
I thought it was canceled, no? I think
Oh, did they cancel it?
hopefully they'll reschedule, yeah.
Well, this was a different kind of group because they only played 2 or 3 prominent songs that people knew. Everything else was creations of their own. Although he did the best rendition of River Deep Mountain High I've ever heard. I don't think anybody could do it any better. Anyway, they had gotten into some not so wonderful habits. And they went off to New York at the advice of a drug dealer who put them in a club down there, no pay. They were supposed to get hotel money and meal money, never saw a nickel. So they had done this behind my back. And Joe calls one day, will you come down and help us? So we talk a little bit. I get off the phone, my ex-wife says to me, don't you dare. You know the saying, do it to me once. Not me. I got on the plane, I went down, and I set him up in a club. I had 4 or 5 record executives come, one from RCA, and he signed them. And they got an album out called Jabberwocky. And they got a nice, huge advance, of which I got 0. Because it went up their noses. I'm sure they've corrected all that by now, but those were the times. The last prominent activity I was involved in, there was a band up in Watertown called the Pineapple Herd. And they had recorded a song by the Monkees called Valerie. And they were getting some local success. It was big in Utica, and it was not bad, pretty big in Syracuse. And I would call them to send them to a fraternity party every now and then. I did. But then I decided, well, they were able to get a record out. Maybe I want to handle them. So I called Ed Wool, who was the leader. Now, you talk about people that didn't belong in the rock and roll business because of their lifestyle. This guy drank nothing but milk. In fact, I never even saw him, I don't know if I ever saw him drink a soda. But he was all about his body, and his sister was outstanding. So much so that I had him in a club down in Hazleton, Pennsylvania. And all my bands used to go a week at a time down there, at least 6. So one night they're there, and in walks Neil Diamond and about 3 of his cronies. Well, they hear the sister sing. He decides he wants to record her as a female clone to him. So we signed a deal, and of course the brother is so jealous, he wants to run the whole show. And he was a taskmaster, is maybe not fair enough to say, he was worse than that. I'll tell you who played with him and tolerated him pretty good was Tommy Haskell and Eddie Barella. And but they had the toughness of Cortland. So the album came out on Paramount. There wasn't a decent song on it other than one by Elton John that she sang. But Paramount was behind it. I'm sure Diamond was pushing them to promote. And I get a call from the A&R people, the promotion people. Will they go on a 36-city tour to promote the album? Now, we can't pay them, but we can take all their expenses up. No food, no. So what they were giving up was their net income that they would have from playing regular jobs. He wouldn't go. No. And in his defense, they were grossing almost $3,000 a week, so I'm sure it was hard to give up. The album obviously didn't do anything, but we got some money out of it. And that's pretty much. There's other bands I certainly could mention, but if I don't mention them, then I don't leave anybody out. Now, my wife alluded to dances at Little York. Well, the same summers that we were going to Watchville Park, and we would go up to Little York once in a while too, there was a disc jockey by the name of Raleigh Fowler, Jolly Raleigh Fowler. He used to come down here and do the dances, and he'd provide the entertainment. Well, this one night I'm playing pitch, racehorse pitch in Basil's. And in walks Charlie Ossett and Loretta Berardi, and they're all bloodied up. The act that was playing at Little York with this disc jockey, along with Bobby Comstock, was Link Ray and the Raymond, and their hit record was Rumble. So the disc jockey on the air had incited people from Syracuse to tango with people from Ithaca and Cortland. They had tire irons, they had all kinds of stuff. Well, it was pretty serious, and a bunch of people went to jail. I don't think from here, do you know Pierre? Anybody?
No,
No.
I don't know.
But the next day, I had a tenant by the name of Pat Kiley in my mother's house. And he operated a loan thing, loan shark, or whatever you call it.
Hard money lender.
Hard money, good term. on Groton Avenue. And he called me. He says, Jim, you do a lot with these bands. I said, well, I have an agency with 11 or 12 of them. He says, how about running the dances at Little York? I said, after what happened last night, you're going to run dances? He said, well, if somebody keeps it under control and doesn't incite, we think we can do it. He said, we'll give you X. I made a terrible deal. I'll give you X amount, he says. His partner was Don McCrae. Boy, you talk about Scrooge and Marley. I got 30% of the gross, and I had to pay the bands. So they knew what the hell they were doing. So we did it. We did it for 8 years. In the summertime, we had some good acts up there because my partner and I were starting to bring recording acts into the area where we'd find 3 locations, so we'd get 3 plays out of them and maybe get the price knocked down pretty good. There was a Fayetteville Inn, there was Little York, and there was a place in the junior high school, Boynton in Ithaca. So some of the ones we had the Supremes for $300. We had Dee Dee Sharp. We had the mashed potatoes. We had her for $200 the night before she went on the Sullivan Show. We had a lot on the Exciters, Dickie Do and the Don'ts. They all had hit records at the time. There was a group with a girl drummer that had Ghost Riders in the Sky. I can't remember her name now. But we packed that place pretty good, and we kept pretty good law and order. We couldn't stop the drinking or whatever else they did in the bushes, but there were no more rumbles.
Did you take buses up there too? Didn't you have buses?
I rented buses from Sword Out and Ferris, and we'd fill them for free. We'd take the kids up, put them on the bus in front of Payne Brothers about 6:30 on a Friday night. Filled it up pretty good.
Yeah.
Yep. There's a lot of things that happened that were very positive. I don't regret any of my 19 years in that business. We didn't get a real good break record-wise. We have some records that were made by like Ronnie. If you remember Cher's #1 record, The Way of Love, he recorded that first, and I have a copy of it, and it's better than hers. Way better. Agreed?
Oh, he had a magnificent voice.
No, he did. He worked at Three Rivers Inn with Sammy Davis Jr. Sammy taught him the fast draw.
About Carnegie.
Oh my God. Thank you.
I knew we were married for a reason.
Huh?
I knew we were married for a reason. I'm not sure.
She's a pretty good straight man.
You don't know the half of it. Summer of '65, the Rolling Stones had not appeared in the United States yet in a live setting. So we get a call from Murray Decay Kaufman, who was a big disc jockey in New York. And he says to my partner, "We need a band to play at Carnegie Hall and back 7 American acts, because we're going to bring the Rolling Stones to the first American concert." Well, why 7 acts? Well, the union says from now on, no British acts will appear without an equal amount of money being spent on American acts. Talk about tit for tat. How small-minded should we get? So we went to Carnegie Hall, and there was Jane the Americans and Dion and Diane Renee. Anybody remember her? Blue Navy Blue was the name of the song.
Yeah.
Yep. And, oh God, I can't remember them all. But we backed the show. I wish Butoff was here, but, because he always says I tell this wrong. But near the end of the set, they were on with Jane the Americans, and he was doing O Cara Mia, and the Stones were back of the curtain. The curtain was down, but the Stones were back there, and they were warming up, and they were louder by far than Ronnie. So Butoff has enough of it. So he takes his Beatle boot through the curtain, kicks whoever's back there. And it was Bill Wyman, the bass player. He still got the boots. But that was Carnegie Hall. Some of the bands did get to travel quite a bit. Mickey Lee and the Persians went to St. Thomas. That's where they met, what's her name? Cass, Mama Cass. Yeah. And did a little drinking with her. I don't drink anymore. I suspect that one of the reasons was that I got caught in Steve Paul's scene in Manhattan one night and sat down at a table and drank with Janis Joplin. I would never do that again. Brother. Yeah, it was good life. Do we have any questions that you might want to ask?
I just have a couple of comments.
Right.
I'm one of the ones that used to take the bus up to Little York.
Okay.
And of course, you know, you couldn't drive, so that bus was like a savior, and I do remember they were always packed. But I do remember seeing Bobby Comstock, I think it was the Shirelles, Gary U.S. Bonds, besides Ron Dio. But I have a picture that I've never shown outside my realm of friends of Ronnie and your brother up at Little York. I'll give you a copy sometime.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't have any memorabilia left. We moved a year ago right now, and I decided to sell all the memorabilia rather than carry it to the new house. Actually, there were orders.
If somebody gave to your granddaughter.
I did give some to my granddaughter, yes. It was named for Nikki.
When did you and Perry Ellis split?
We split in April of 1967. Do you want a detail?
That's up to you.
Well, again, I made a bad deal. I took a 30-70 deal with him. He convinced me that because he had the 55 houses at Cornell locked up, and he had, at that particular time in '64, a couple of his bands were stronger than any of mine. So that's the deal I took. The bad thing about it is that I was too stupid to ever get an accounting from him. So we were going to New York every Tuesday for recordings, for meetings with agencies, and I was paying half the expenses. Now, that doesn't mean a lot because he wouldn't pay for anybody to do anything. He made Charlie Starr, a blind fella, sleep on the floor in the hotel rather than get him a room.
Is he still alive? Is Perry Ellis still alive?
Perry Ellis, no.
Just recently.
Just died.
5 years. Yeah. We had a real falling out because I took what I thought was a fair share back to Cortland, and I did very well. I did extremely well in '68, '69, '70. Joe was in some of the bands, had more fun than probably money he made.
Yeah.
As a high schooler. As a high schooler.
Yeah,
I
I was
know.
a high school kid.
He was a high school kid playing.
Well, everybody was a high school kid.
Right.
We still are.
I mean, when we started, and my brother and Ronnie were both on the baseball team, Jack Hannon had a fit because they stopped playing ball, and then everybody was at McNeil's getting a guitar, and nobody would play baseball or basketball. No, they weren't any good anyway. I have one anecdote about my brother that I think has some interest. As a 14-year-old freshman, he was on the baseball team, and he was a left-handed pitcher, and he was slower than slow, did not own a fastball, threw a pretty good natural curve. Well, this one day, a team from Elmira came to Cortland. And I don't know if you know the makeup of the baseball field at Meldrum Field, but home plate is near Huntington Street, and you go across the football field, there's bleachers, and then Randall Street. Well, in the second inning, this guy was a cleanup hitter. He also was 14. He launched the ball over that set of bleachers onto Randall Street into Paul Contro's yard. And if you'd like to know who it was Ernie Davis. So, my brother, his pitching career, although he wasn't bad, he certainly had control.
Jimmy, when we used to go to block dances and the CYO and the fairgrounds, were you booking those bands into those?
Yeah.
You were doing all that booking?
Yeah.
In the late 60s?
Although, when you talk about block dancers, there was nothing for me at all, because all they paid them was scale.
Right,
And I didn't take any money out of scale.
right.
Um,
But we'd see groups like Gary Hall, Free Will.
oh yeah,
Porter,
God, I didn't mention
Porter,
Gary.
Gary, Porter, and those boys.
Yep, oh, yes, the Magic Dog.
Right.
Oh, yes.
We had some great music here
Well,
in the late
in
60s.
'68, I had 24 active groups. And I'd say 11 of them were full-time, making a living. Now, to that thought, the manager of the Monkees and the guy whose babysitter wrote Locomotion, what the hell's his name? I can't remember his name now. I will. I'm having coffee with him in New York, and he says to me, he says, I don't know, why you people from Cortland and Ithaca think you're going to do anything. You're too far away. He says, the other thing is, I've seen the itineraries that your groups play. They make good money. I said, yeah? He said, well, that's not how to make it. You gotta be like the kids from Spanish Harlem that I get a hold of. They're starving. They don't know where they're sleeping the next day. They're hungry. And he used the analogy, and I've always used it, of the coal miners in Pennsylvania and West Virginia. How those kids will do anything to stay out of those mines. So they play football so they can wind up at Penn State and Pitt and West Virginia and Ohio State. Because they're really hungry not to go through that life. But our people had apartments, they had cars, they had all the beer they wanted.
Girls.
Plenty of girls. No,
So how did Doug Thaler take some of your business to Bruce Payne at Thames Talent, or is that because of the Deep Purple connection?
that was what it was.
The Deep Purple.
Doug didn't do it.
Doug
Doug
didn't
was
do it.
dead set against it. In fact, I didn't mention Doug, and I should have. He was a English Lit major at Cortland State. And he called me as a freshman to say he had a band. Band was awful. But we sent them out, and they knew people on every campus, so we got them jobs. And Doug eventually graduated. Oh, I didn't mention Brian Miles, Billy Pierce. Doug wound up with them, and when we had a problem with Brian Miles, because when Nicky died, the first person they wanted was Mickey Lee Sewell out of Brian's Idols. And the band certainly didn't want to let him go. But, I don't know where it was.
So that's how they got Deep.
Oh, Doug.
Yeah, Doug.
Doug then became a keyboard player with Ronnie.
Right,
And they wrote a couple of rock operas. He was a very capable writer.
right.
No, that didn't have anything to do with Doug. The Bruce Payne thing connection. Bruce Payne,
Because they became pretty good friends in the late 70s, early 80s, and then they used to vacation in the Virgin Islands, a whole group of 6, 8 guys would rent a house for a month.
I
at a
did
time.
not know that.
Yeah, they'd all rent a house, Colin would come down, Richie would come down, Ronnie would come down.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, they'd all.
But Ronnie and Doug had a pretty good falling out.
Right,
What I remember most about Doug is I'm in New York at Columbia Studios recording Wool with a couple of songs that Doug had written. So he calls me in the studio. He says, don't bother going any further. Both of those songs are on the new Osmond Brothers album. So we stopped. I got offered a job in 1972 in Manhattan with Premier Talent. Because my agency was dissipating. And I knew it. And I wasn't adapting to the new music very well. I hated Led Zeppelin and Jethro Tull and all those English acts that did nothing but want you to sit there and watch their drum solos and their guitar solos. I don't believe in that. I believe people want to dance. You know, that's why we have disco. It's because of those acts.
exactly.
Yep. I started to write a book about it, but got too fired up.
There was a lot of dance at Studio 54 amongst other things too.
Oh, yeah.
In the late 70s, and people wanted to dance.
Yes, they did. People that work all week have all this pent-up energy that they want, on Saturday night, they want to get rid of. They don't want it to sit there and go, because you're a stud. I mean, come on. I did see Led Zeppelin at the Newport Jazz Festival in Newport one year, and there were 300,000 people. And I would say 80% were women. Yep. But Doug took the job that I was offered in New York. And it wasn't 6 months that he was there. He was in the management firm that had Bon Jovi, and he later had Motley Crue.
Right.
He did very well. I'm really pleased with how far some of the people got.
And you didn't mention Mark Nossoff either.
Oh my God. Well, I really don't know much about Mark other than he's a great drummer in Europe. Plays a lot of sessions over there. I can tell you one Mark Nossoff story. He was 18. What time is it?
Fine.
5 up.
Oh, should we stop?
You're fine.
All right. Mark was 18. I get a call from the vice president of Pepsi of Ohio. And his daughter's going to have a debutante party. I said, how do you know about the band? Oh, her sister goes to Vassar. And she heard him there. Okay. So he says, now we'd like to hire Will to play at her party, but we have a bunch of rules. In fact, there's 27 of them that you guys would have to adhere to in order to play. So first of all, it's Christmas night. It's okay. So he sends me the list. And it's everything from attire to interacting with the people there and all the things that people would want to have control of. So, he tells me to send a price, I send a price, $4,500. Well, nobody was going to say no to that. Nobody in my agency had ever gotten that much. Not as a guarantee. So, we go out there, Christmas afternoon, fly, and everybody shows up at the hotel, and when Mark comes in, he's got jeans and a t-shirt on.
Typical Mark.
I said, Mark, you gotta have a suit and a tie. I had to go out and find a store that would open up and sell us a suit and tie. But we couldn't have played the job.
That's what a manager does.
That's
That's
a
exactly what they do. Yep.
Good ending.
Thank you.